shitcoin.com show. The guys sit down with guests to chit chat about crypto. It's time for the shitcoin.com show. Let's all not get tracked.
Welcome to the shitcoin.com show, everyone. As always, here with Andreas, and today's special guest is Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
So I think it's a pretty interesting time with everything that's going on in the space, but particularly FTX. You guys are doing some pretty cool stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, the markets you guys have, a lot of this stuff, I don't think anyone really saw it coming. We were talking about this earlier. Andreas was saying that. What has been the strategy behind launching all of these different markets?
Yeah, so, I think that there's a few things. And, I think the biggest is just that the kind of crypto market space has been pretty stagnant for a while in terms of product offerings. Basically there's been spot markets and there's been perpetuals and there's been quarterlies. And that's sort of been what there's been. And nothing against those, and they're cool things, but it hasn't been a super dynamic space in terms of product innovation. And, we basically felt like there's a lot of potentially compelling products that hadn't been tried and that we wanted to try them and see what took off. And so, we've asked around a lot to what people wanted, thought about products that exist in traditional finance, thought about products we thought would be cool, sort of workshop them and then eventually launch them. And, I think some of them have gotten a lot of traction and really sort of made FTX stand out. And
the move contract you have, can you explain to people how that works? Like people not from traditional finance?
Yeah, definitely. So, basically, it's what they are. So if you take, for instance, tomorrow's move, it's basically a future that expires the amount that Bitcoin moves tomorrow in absolute value terms. So if Bitcoin goes up $100 or down $100, either way, it expires to $100. So basically, it's worth more the more volatile markets are, and less the more calm they are. So that's sort of what it is. We have daily moves, we have weekly moves, so how much it moves from the start to the end of a week, and we have quarterly moves. And one cool thing about them is that they're super easy to sort of think about and understand. It's just the difference between the open and close tomorrow. So that's sort of on one hand, but on the other hand, they actually sort of form the backbone of volatility and options products, because tomorrow's move is basically literally the expected volatility tomorrow. And, you can sort of build pure volatility things out of options, but it's a little bit messy. And spreads tend to be pretty wide. They tend to be illiquid because there's just a bunch of them. They have all this weird specific exposure. And this is sort of just like the pure volatility play. And so it sort of is both like a really nice backbone of a volatility space and sort of nice liquid hedging product, while also being a kind of cool, easy to understand product.
And when you do this kind of contracts for other stuff, like you guys have the Trump token, which has, is that an ERC20? I forgot.
No, so we might make it one. Right now, it's just a futures contract.
Okay, so that token people can use to bet on whether or not Trump will win the next election. But can you foresee would it make sense to make contracts on top of that? So would people be gambling on the volatility of Trump's chance in winning?
And
I know it's very esoteric, but
right. No, it's a good question. And I think basic answer is not right now, but maybe eventually. And I think sort of the way I think of this is that first the base contract has to take off before the volatility contract is something that people are going to trade. No one would trade Bitcoin options if no one traded Bitcoin. And similarly, you take a super illiquid shitcoin, and I just don't think there's going to be that much demand for its options. But I think that whenever something starts taking off and getting pretty liquid, there starts to be demand for the volatility of it. And so I think that, even if right now there isn't a ton, I think that if the Trump contracts become super liquid and popular and they're trading, $10 million a day, I think then people would start to really enjoy the volatility contracts on them.
I just love that we live in a world where we have something called Trump contracts. What a time to be alive.
Yep.
Become an early adopter. ship.ai.
So I remember from a conference, well, actually the last conference I went to before all of this,
Yep.
at the Satoshi Roundtable, people were, I was sitting in on this, a discussion group where people were asking questions to professional miners because it's a hard field to understand. So as you probably guess from the questions there, they were talking about how miners can have a more financially stable life.
Yep.
And how that can be done by futures contracts about hash rate. And this was also discussed at the Magical Crypto Conference last year.
Yep.
But I think it was mostly talk. Maybe you can explain a little bit and say what you guys do.
Yeah, cool. So, as you said, like mining, it's a pretty cool field, but it's also a tough field in a lot of ways. And one of them is you sort of have no idea how profitable it's going to be, or if it's even going to be profitable, or if it's going to be a loser instead. And the sort of tough thing here is that, you pay money up front to buy these mining rigs. You put in a bunch of time, you hook them up to electricity, you start paying electricity costs, then you're mining Bitcoins. But this only makes sense if you're sort of making money on this, if you're like mining enough Bitcoins to justify the operation. And some parts of this you can estimate. You can estimate your electricity costs, how much it costs to buy the miner. What you don't know is hash rate or difficulty. And what I mean by that is that, the way that the Bitcoin blockchain works is that basically it tries to target 10-minute block times. And there's sort of a fixed payment per block, which means it's paying out a fixed amount, basically. And so the more people that are trying to mine, the more people you're competing with to mine those Bitcoins, and the fewer you're going to get. And so because of this, if you buy some miners and start mining, you're pretty sad if a ton of people start mining. You're pretty happy if very few people do, because you'll get more rewards if you're sort of a larger fraction of the total output. So this has pretty large impacts on your profitability, or whether it even makes sense in the first place. But it's not clear how you'd hedge this. It's just like, I know, I got to hedge my exposure to whether this guy in this other country decides to turn on a lot of machines. I don't know what his deal is. So what we've created are hash rate contracts or difficulty contracts. They're very related concepts, which basically are futures that just expire to, as it turns out, how much the world does end up mining, which is sort of equivalent to saying, how inefficient mining yourself is, how many people you're competing with. And so the cool thing about these is that if you're a miner, you could potentially hedge your exposure to, to difficulty changes by buying these contracts. And so then, if it turns out that a lot of people are mining, difficulty goes way up, hash rate goes up, you win on your futures, potentially as much as you're losing to the lower profitability of your operation.
So then, I guess then it starts. Then it sounds more like a shipping company or an airline than just like crazy Chinese people
Right.
gambling.
Yep. And that's sort of the hope, is that it can become, a more stable business and a more well understood one and a more sort of financially mature one. So, we launched these contracts, which I'm super excited about, and, they're picking up activity. And, maybe this is something miners themselves will trade. Maybe this is something that liquidity providers will trade, and then they'll do OTC deals with the miners. There's sort of a lot of ways that this flow of funds might work, but overall, I'm just super excited for, people to have sort of an agreed upon way to hedge exposure to difficulty adjustments.
And also another interesting sort of token that you guys have are these leverage tokens, which are ERC20 tokens. Can you explain a bit more about that and how they work?
Yeah, so basically what they are is they're tokenized positions on FTX. And so we take, a 3x long ETH position and wrap it up in an ERC20 token. And the sort of cool things about this basically are the following. First of all, you can trade it just like a spot token. You can buy and sell it without dealing with margin or collateral or liquidations or anything like that. But you have a leveraged exposure. So that's one cool thing. Another cool thing is that because it's an ERC20 token, you can move it around the blockchain. So they're listed on a number of other exchanges right now, and you can trade them on any of those. You can move them between them. You can arbitrage them. So it really is the same token on each. But this allows customers all over the ecosystem to get access to leveraged positions, even if it's on an exchange that doesn't have any leverage offerings at all, that doesn't even have the infrastructure for it. And so that's sort of the coolest thing about it, is that it lets you put on a leveraged position without needing to manage margin, without needing to have the technological capabilities to handle it. You can just do it.
Very cool.
And I have a follow-up on that one. So
yep,
I'm sure you've also followed prediction markets since Ethereum launched.
Yep.
Gnosis and Augur. I mean, there's not much to say about those because not much has happened. Absolutely no traction. Do you think it's possible that the fantasy we all had of decentralized prediction markets will actually just be centralized tokens like you guys have, like the leveraged long shitcoins that are traded on layers of decentralized exchanges?
I think it might be. And I think that, one sort of thing that I think befell the attempt to have decentralized prediction markets is, first of all, they have all the disadvantage of DEXs. They're slow, they're expensive, they're illiquid. But in addition to that, they're not really well suited to it, because if you think about it, the whole point of a DEX is trustlessness. Is that it's just all on the blockchain. There's no centralized party which is making any relevant decisions here. But the problem is, let's say you have a Trump contract. Trump's not on the blockchain. That's not a blockchain event. That's a real life event. So you
need an oracle.
Right, you need an oracle, exactly. Somehow the blockchain needs to learn who won. And now you start asking, all right, well, where's this oracle coming from? And you're sort of back at square one. You're like, oh, well, there's a guy who's publishing a number to the blockchain. And there's your centralization. And so this is a really hard problem to solve. It's really hard to come up with stable ways to have anything that's not natively crypto on a DEX without accepting some level of centralization somewhere. And I think that was sort of one of the big problems with Augur and other sort of decentralized prediction markets.
What's the most crazy market you can think of that can be tokenized on, say, ERC20? If we'll ignore what regulators in any country or anything would say, we'll just assume anything is legal in this world. What's the craziest one you can think of, the coolest one?
So I'll say two examples. One thing, a few examples here. One thing is that, you could just take literally any financial product, list a future on it, tokenize a position in the future. So, any commodity, any security, any asset, anywhere you could do. You could do something like tokenize yourself. A lot of people have tried to do this. And you issue shares of it, you dividend out earnings, maybe you allow some governance of yourself. And then I'll give one more example, which is a really degenerate token, which you definitely should not do.
Let's go.
But you can have a token whose value is tied to the market cap of, for instance, a stable coin. And this is something actually a lot of people have asked for, is I want to bet on the growth of stable coins. So I want to get long tether growth or short tether growth. And you could do this. You could list a future. It expires. In fact, you wouldn't even need to do that, right? It's on the blockchain. Tether's actually on the blockchain. You could even just do a smart contract token that via some smart contract is redeemable for however many ERC20 tether tokens exist at some certain date. And it sounds like a really cool idea, but as
the incentives are so perverse, I love it.
That's a problem, right? Of course, someone just takes $1 billion, creates 1 billion tether, and buys a lot of this token, creates 1 billion tether, expires to a lot, they redeem it. So it's the various attempts at having stablecoin growth contracts have all died that sort of same death.
I think that's a fantastic one.
What has surprised you? What markets have you launched that have kind of outperformed your expectations, FTX?
Yeah, and I think move contracts, they're cool products, but I think they've done super well. We're really excited with the reception they've gotten, with the amount of uptake that they've gotten. And we've started putting more products around it, including we have BVol and IBVol, which are plus or minus one ERC20 tokens on volatility, which rests on move contracts. I think that's like right now one of the sort of products that I'm proudest of, and I would be super excited to see sort of increased adoption of BVol and IBVol going forward.
That's great. I had one last one.
Yep.
Yeah. So on futures exchanges, well, derivatives exchanges in general, I've tried quite a few, but the thing that doesn't work for me on all the different ones I've tried is the thing I need to post as collateral for my position is never what I have.
Yep.
But with you guys, I think you can just use anything.
Yeah, that's right.
Why has no one done this? I don't understand. Why do they hate us?
I don't know. I'm just confused. It makes no sense. This is one of the, and it's one of the reasons you started FTX. You're like, what the fuck? Seriously? Like,
yeah, it's driving me crazy, man. You'd have to buy like so many things.
Exactly. Like, oh shit, like getting close to liquidation of my ETH Classic futures position. Time to go buy some spot ETH Classic to move it into my ETH Classic futures wallet. Like,
yes.
The whole point of futures, you don't have to do that shit.
Yeah.
And it just makes no sense. And so, first of all, it's just like cross-margining things makes everything so much simpler. You can always isolate. You can just use 2 different sub-accounts to isolate, but this allows you to not have to deal with that and just combine everything if you want. And then the other things, we just accept, Bitcoin, ETH, dollars, Tether, FTT, bunch of other things as collateral for all of the contracts.
And all stable coins.
Yep, and all stable coins basically. And, we just say you gotta have enough total assets. We don't care what they are. You put them as collateral and we'll sell them out for dollars if we need to transfer P&L. And so that means that you can sort of keep your collateral in whichever currency is most convenient for you, rather than having, having to like put it all into one specific token. Maybe that's not the token you want. Maybe it takes a while to move around, blah, blah, blah.
Very cool. Well, Sam, it's been very cool to hear your thoughts and hear where FTX is going. How can everyone keep up to date with the latest goings on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, go to ftx.com. Be excited to have you there, or ftx.us if you're an American. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm SBF_Alameda. And you can find a bunch of other social media links on our website, including Telegram, where we have a pretty active community.
All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you. And we'll leave our ref link in the description.
Oh, yeah, we're going to show that.
All right.